To me, looking at the BLM era with my 2025 vision, the BLM era was a Trojan horse movement that took advantage of the anxiety of black people and the distrust of black people towards law enforcement, and pushed it to the max. Constant racial narratives and everyone crying and hollering and hoopling, and you had a lot of activists, fake activists, that were getting their bread during this era. To me, this was a cash grab of grifters and people using black people's emotionalness as a weapon to get themselves into positions of power, or to get themselves some social media relevance, and take advantage of the sound, like say something good that could be used as a sound bite, and grab themselves a good either it could be a good following on social media, which could result in media deals and money, through sponsorships. You can get donations and things like that, and travel around as an activist. You could be part of whatever group, probably join charity groups and stuff like that. You could even get elected off of it, saying some grievance type stuff for people who want to hear about how terrible it is that black people are dying at the hands of police. And to me, this was like a media created type propaganda. Now looking back, the media hyped this all the way up, and it was something that was used in order to get constant chaos in black communities throughout America. And to me, in my conspiracy, this was like a union of gentrifiers, grifters, police forces, elected officials, multiple different agencies that came together to get this BLM type, this BLM grift, this BLM, what do you call it? This hysteria off the ground. Because you have to think, in the 2000s and things like that, everybody's hysteria is focused on terrorism. Because in America, the world is always hysteria, but in America, there's always some type of fear of something. America's built off of that, literally. It's a fear of Indians when these pilgrims got here. That's the vibe that they set up, because they had done some shady deals with the Indians, constantly pushing them off their land, and making deals where Indians would get terrible land. And then you have Indians that are nomadic people who didn't want to live the settler type American life. They wanted to just live in their teepees and things like that. And their settlers were like, nah, we're doing our settler thing. We're trying to take over this whole continent. And the Americans didn't understand that. So the settlers were like, nah, you know what? We're just going to put you on a shitty reservation. So, that's the vibe that America was on from the start, by these these white people that came here, these European descendants of these European settlers. And so then you go on, and then you also have these people, these same Europeans, deciding that even though they were constantly yapping about their freedom, they wanted to have their right to own slaves. And slavery was something different in the New World than any slavery had ever been anywhere else, because we had multi-generational slavery. You know, in other places you were a slave because you were captured, prisoner of war, or something like that. You were some type of gifted servant. It was really like servitude. And you know, you worked for somebody and you got out of it after some time. Usually you didn't do it like your whole life. And that was the end of it. Like, you weren't like, it wasn't like your children and their children and their children. It wasn't that type of thing. But that's not what happened here. Here now you got like slavery going on, multi-generational slavery. And then after that, you know, then racial hysteria came after that. They were like, all these Negroes think they're gonna get out of slavery. Oh, we got something for you. We're gonna start wearing hoods now. Yeah, we're gonna start wearing hoods, and we're gonna start tying these ropes. Start catching you when yeah, we're gonna do this a long time too. The government's never gonna try to do anything to stop it either. Yep, we're just gonna do it like that because we're angry. We can't own our damn Negroes anymore. And that racial hysteria just continued to seep into the minds of white communities all throughout the country. And this has become the mindset of American white people. And if you wanted to be a true American, you had to know that it was white first, colors in the back. Colors could have nice things like white people. And the rules were unspoken rules were, if you had nice things, you had to give it to a white person. Now, if there's a white person who's poorer than you and had worse shoes than you, they could take your shoes. If you had, you know, food in your house and they didn't have food, they could come into your house and take your food. So, you know, you just have a situation where you have a lot of racial hysteria just baked into this country. You have all different types of racial hysteria. And so now we get to the civil rights movement. And this starts because of a very violent case that I'm pretty sure everyone knows it. You have Emmett Till getting just, completely bludgeoned to death by a bunch of savages who were acquitted. You know that this is not justice, basically. This was not justice. These people were acquitted because they're in Mississippi, bigoted area, and they're okay with allowing bigoted behavior to happen. So this idea, and so this goes to show this, you have to think about this, because you have to read in between everything, that if black people who are supposed to be Americans are getting bludgeoned to death like this, and the perpetrators are being let off, then there's different levels of Americanness, and there needs to be some type of solution to answer to this so that this can't continue to happen. You can't continue to allow, these types of savage acts to happen towards a minority, because as a minority you can't afford to continuously be attacked by these people who have a history of doing this. And this is why the civil rights movement was able to take off as it did. So black people demonstrating and looking for ways to find equality. And really what this is a way of showing like, yo, we're human beings. Uh, and we get treated like human beings and sit in the same places and things like that, like white people do. You know, why do we have to sit somewhere else? And have to go through the back door. You know, a lot of your domestic workers and things like that are black. So how do you have a problem with black people being in the same positions as you? So black people were trying to get in the same position, get their hand through in the door. And then Martin Luther King and many other icons had come up with many ways to get themselves into the door and get black people a hand up. Finally get that, uh, get America to see, get the government to see, like, yo, like, we need to get in there. So now, integration. We're now in the integration era. And now it's supposed to get better. Even though Martin Luther King got shot, uh, the government admitted to killing him. But now we're in the era where things are supposed to be equal. Everything is equal now. Now, white people get all, weird about talking about race. It's no longer bigoted white people. They disappear. Or live in poor rural areas. There's no more white people in regular multicultural cities. Now everything is colorblind. Now everybody is understanding of racial harmony. And anyone who's a bigot is some type of outlier. And everyone's having a hippie whole parade time. People are doing drugs. People are having all this fun. People are getting their swirl on. People are finally able to, be with people of other colors and things like that. So this is that era. And yeah, that's the beginning of the integration. Now people are finally being able to, I guess you have your white friends now. You can do whatever. Now the magical integration button got hit. All the bigoted white people gone. Until the 80s came, I guess. Then some of that stuff kind of, America fell back into its habit again. But then when you think about the 80s, it's a lot of, fuckery that we deal with now. Um, Reaganomics came in, and people thought that Reagan was going to come in and he's going to get things back in order. And, it's probably the same shit that everyone's talking about now. Just now we do it on the internet. People like get all these liberals, liberals ruining everything. They're out here, uh, raising the cost of everything and have all these liberal policies. And, everybody was probably hating the hippies. Hippies back then were probably the same as the non-binary people now. Whatever the fuck. BLM, whatever you want, the woke people. That's the word. They were the woke people back then. So everyone's like, yo, we're tired of these fucking hippies. Get Ronald Reagan. So now the hippies get to go away. Ronald Reagan comes in, and now conservative policies take over. And yeah, as a result, I believe this is really where a lot of immigration took place. Now a lot of Hispanics were able to get into the country, and a lot of drugs were able to get into the country. Now millions upon millions upon millions of Hispanics are able to root themselves into the American Southwest. Yeah, so this is a whole demographic. This is going to become a demographic shift, and this is what now has white people panicking because now these Hispanics are getting to a point where they may become the majority. White people might become a minority in the United States, and deep down, not so deep down, white people do not want any parts of being minorities in America. They want to be the majority. And deep down, they want to be the overwhelming majority because then you can go out and you can create all types of white policies, or policies that you know are going to go for white people. You can blatantly vote, over and over for white type policies. You can gerrymander. You can do all types of things that no one's really got. Like, there's so many. There'll be so many overwhelmingly things that go for white people that you can't even. You don't have time to debate all these things because it's just like it's so ridiculous. So if you're black, or a person of color, you have to pick your poison. Which is why it's funny to see people saying like, all black people or whatever do is complain about race. It's like, dude, most of the time, people like not we're not talking about the ones who are like the complainers like Al Sharpton or something like that, who's a grifter, but like we're talking about the black people who actually are serious about like exposing racial, you know, inequality. Anytime you're just scratching the surface. We're just talking about redlining, or you're just talking about police inequality, or the amount of uh, acquittals, black people being acquitted of crimes they didn't commit. Uh, you know, you, the, the education system, how black kids are just not, benefiting in schools. Uh, there's so many issues, child abuse, there's so many issues in the black community. You're just grasping the surface. How it's just, yeah. So, people are like, oh man, these blacks are always talking about race. It's like, no, just always racial shit happening. And you can't avoid it. Like, so many times you want to avoid the man, it's like, it's just, damn. It's like, it's, it's a floating, it's a floating stake in the desert, bro. Okay, what am I supposed to talk about? There's nothing else going on here. That's how I guess that's how this country wants it. But like I said, so this is what goes on in this country. There's always hysteria. And like I said, with the drugs coming in now, you got drugs going into all the cities, stuff like that. Everybody's, getting hooked on drugs. That's causing all types of issues. Families falling apart. Um, yeah. So a lot of standards of things going down. You got a lot of people freaking out because Reagan's outsourcing jobs and they're going somewhere else, China, whatever, for cheap. Um, so now things are changing. You know, so the types of jobs that Americans are doing are going to be different now. Or the types of jobs that Americans can prosper in are going to be different now. Now you can't just be like a labor type of job. Now more people have to be actually educated. So now you're going into through the 80s with all these drugs and stuff like that, and that's taken over. Drugs are seeping through everything, part of life. So this creates a hysteria. You have a drug hysteria, and these Republicans and stuff like that are now having a drug, what do you call it? A war on drugs. It's a war on drugs. They're vowing to get rid of drugs and get them out of here because that's the problem now. But see, now that hysteria of drugs allows them to come up with all types of policies and stuff like that that people would not agree to. But now they're okay with it because they fear drugs coming in and affected, or some type of drug dealer, in their area affecting them. So now they're like, you know what? Do something about that. Just do something. Whenever you say something like that, that makes you allowing that person to come up with whatever they want. And they did that. And there's all types of crazy stuff that happened during that time period. Uh, you know, people probably didn't care. They were like, yo, lock these people up, get rid of them, because they're a bunch of criminals. And then also lock the drug dealers, or lock the drug users up too. Lock them up because, they're a bunch of uh, helpless people. So there's no mercy out here. That's the American way. Screw getting help for these people, lock them up. So now we go through the 80s and the 90s. Now they're coming up with crime laws. They're locking everybody up. Jail populations booming. Private prison, people jumping up in the air like, Wolf on Wall Street. They're loving it. Um, so yeah, it's a good time for them. They're eating good. Yeah, they're eating designer. They're eating designer birds. They're eating peacocks and everything. They're eating all types of nice turkeys. They're taking all types of uh, trophies home to their families. They're buying all types of whips. So yeah, like you go through the 90s. And also, because the drug epidemic now, of course you're gonna have over policing. So now because of over policing and things like that, that goes into the distrust that black people have with or the distrust that inner city people have with the police. So now you have the this element where people, especially black people, have uh, no faith in the police and don't believe the police are going to do things in favor of their community. So then this creates a no snitching type of element to the community. This creates a element of, you know, not really trying to cooperate with law enforcement. And this also creates that element of black people identifying with street behavior, you know, like before, even in the 80s, like black people weren't like identifying with street behavior. You understood like the Black Panthers and they had to do what they had to do. And, you understood that, some of the black peace stones and stuff like that, they did what they had to do. But like the average black person wasn't like, back then, wasn't like seeing things from like a street perspective. Hip hop hadn't gone to that point yet. And so, when NWA comes out, now things are changing. Now it's like, okay, these guys out here talking about fuck the police and all this type of stuff. So now regular young kids is out here talking about fuck the police and, you know, straight from the underground and all this type of stuff. And so now it's like popular to like talk about fuck the police. And, you know, now the community sees the police as the ops. And that was it from then, you know. Um, so then like that too. Now gangster rap comes in because you had normal hip hop, normal rap music before, but it was just like party music. And then you had messages too though, but it wasn't this type of thing. So like NWA starts this type of genre, gangster rap, and now a lot of different types of messages start coming, especially to the youth. And now kids is now hearing like these types of messages about like like you know dissing authorities and shooting at this person and that person. How and then now the rap lyrics is changing. Now you can talk about. So before people wasn't talking like that in music. If you listen to 80s rap, like it's a whole different vibe. It's about don't go out there and hang around outside. Don't go out here and be and get caught up going to jail. Stay out. Uh, don't stay outside and do the wrong thing. It's all about that type of stuff. But then now you get into the '90s, and now it's all about being the toughest guy. Going talking about how many people you killed, how many people you you think you can, how many people you think you can take out, how you hate police officers, how they need to die. Talking about you know you're black and ain't nobody ever done nothing for you, which is kind of a true sentiment. There's all these kinds of talking points in the '90s. It's raw. Nobody's holding back. Everybody's getting it off their chest. They're like, man, fuck all this shit. Like, I grew up around drugs and all this type of stuff. I'm not about to sugarcoat. So, that kind of vibe comes in now. Now everybody's talking rough and rugged. This is what's going down. So we go through that era. And then the climax is the East Coast, West Coast beef. And then, Tupac and Biggie die. And that's kind of where, that's where, I feel like that's where rap also kind of climax. You never really got rap music. You got popular artists after, like you got DMX, you got Ja Rule, you even got like Drake and all that. But like, I feel like rap music and just hip hop as a culture was at its highest popularity between the East Coast, West Coast beef. But anyway, moving onwards. Now we're in the 2000s, or we're going into the Y2K era, so the turn of the century, and into a new millennium. For all you young Gen Zers, you got to understand that the millennium was a big deal because some people thought the world was going to end. Like some people saying there's predictions that the world might not go to the new millennium, and that the what was it? The computers might not be ready for a change. They might not have known how to switch change into the '99 to 2000. And then it was a big deal because everybody was optimistic. We'd seen the craziness of the '80s, some of the issues of the '90s, and now everybody's like, all right, so if we go into the 21st century, we're leaving all this backward stuff behind. Being a bum, smoking crack, doing heroin, say going to jail, doing all this bullshit is something that you gotta leave in the 20th century. Leave it in this time. Leave all this racism in the 20th century. We going into the 21st century now. We on some different stuff. So this is the mindset of people. So now we enter the 21st century. Everybody's hyped. Everybody's turned up. Everyone's partying. Everyone's excited. Now, this is when this mindset of like people start talking about this 2000s whatever. Why is this racial thing happening? Why is this happening? Why y'all still being racist in 2000 this? Why y'all still doing because now everyone expects like, yo, we're in 2000 whatever, like we can't come out here talking about racial having a racial bias and having issues with people now. But we on some different stuff, like leave all that old Jim Crow sitting on the porch rocking back and forth talking about I hate the coloreds, I don't want to see no blacks in my town. To leave all that stuff in a whole nother time period. We're in a new time period, time to think new. So now we're in the time period of colorblind. We're in a time period where you have people, different types of roles where we'd never think of. Now everybody's the first black person, the first Asian, and the first Jewish person, and the first all this. You have white rappers and black country singers, and like everybody's whatever. You're going to school with a bunch of different friends. You're not really thinking like like, damn, I have a white friend. Like, no one's in the 21st century is thinking about that. The turn of the century. Now you playing video games. People playing video games. And nobody's thinking about, oh, this video game is woke. This video game is, this isn't, this has cultural values that don't exist in this time period. Nobody gives a fuck. Okay, you don't care that there's a fucking Japanese dude in a Texan cowboy role. It's funny, like during the early 2000s, like late 90s, even like the mid 90s, all through the 2000s, especially early 2000s. You have all types of roles that now people would say, oh, this isn't woke stuff, this isn't culturally appropriate, or this doesn't match the time period. Nobody gave a damn. This is the time where you have rappers and stuff like that, making cameo appearances in all types of different roles and things like that you hadn't even thought of like before. Now you got all types of rappers and different types of movies, and they're able to play in main character roles or side character roles that get a lot of screen time. Now rappers are like rappers became like the cool thing. Because before rappers were just like a gimmick, especially in the 80s. And then in the 90s, it was kind of like they get more roles, but rappers also seemed like something that was like white people kind of scared of it. But now in the 2000s, it's something that rappers are getting put into main roles. Or put into big roles. They're getting screen time in movies. They're getting good publicity. They're getting more seen as moguls. They seem like people that's actually making like upward success. You got Murder Inc. You got G-Unit. You got all these different rap labels. You got of course you got Jay-Z coming out with the Rockefeller. You got the Rockefeller shit going on, and it was a time to be around. It was a beautiful time to be around, because it seemed like even the black people in the streets, like you thought you could become like one of them one day. You thought you could be like Jay-Z one day, if you rapped hard enough. Everybody knew somebody who thought they could be a rapper for real. None of this mumble shit. Like, everybody knew somebody who would spin some bars, who could really rap. They could, you hit them like, yo, like, let me hear something. They da 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 da. Like this, something like that. I hit you with the boom back, big bop, pop, boom back, and you like, damn. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody knew somebody like that, and that was that time period, the 2000s, 90s too, like 2000s. Like, you had that going on, and everybody, felt like they were going to be the next one. And that's what people was thinking about. They wanted to be successful. They wanted to make themselves. People wanted to work to become the next thing. Like, people wanted to be, people wanted to be. People wanted to be the next rag to riches story. You know what I'm saying? People wanted to grind every day and make themselves, into something better. You didn't have people just thinking they could just be washed up and then start a podcast type shit. Like, people wanted to actually constantly be the best at their craft. Everybody wanted to be the best, lyricist. Or people, if you weren't a rapper, you want to be the best. You want to have the best game on the court. You want to be the best ball player. You didn't want anybody out playing. You want to be constantly out playing. Dudes used to play ball all day back in the day. Like, you would see dudes, you go outside in the morning, leave, come back. Dudes was there in the afternoon on the court, still playing. You leave, you go do something else, you come back, and you see some another group of niggas is playing on other teams with other dudes, still playing ball, and the sun is going down. Like dudes used to play ball all day. It was a different breed. You still have, of course, some people doing that, but it's not like it used to be. Like the porch used to be packed. You know what I'm saying? And everybody had an NBA jersey on. And now it's like, it's more like it's a different vibe with NBA now. It's like people don't really care. People care more about their parlays than actually looking at their star player or star player. People just look at like what they can get out of them through these parlays, and that's how they see it. Like they get angry, based on that the performance and of these players. Yeah, that's not like a true love for players in the game. No one really cares. People don't really care about star players not really showing up for games, and people don't really care that star players don't perform the way that they're hyped to perform. Yeah, it's just like that part's falling off. But that's another thing. Sport. NBA is another thing for another day. But like, that's just part of my thing. Like in the 2000s, people wanted to play ball. Then you had your people that, the people that wanted to be pimps or players or max and all that type of stuff. They wanted to show they could juggle a bunch of girls. You had TV shows that openly talked about it. Like, yo, I got this girl, I got that girl, white girl, black girl, this girl, they're all in my house, and I gotta let them know that this is what I do, and I'm a pimp or I'm a player, so I gotta have a bunch of girls. It was that era. Like people still wanted to, have this pimp fantasy or pimp, player type, what do you call it? People wanted to live that type of lifestyle. Some people wanted to live that type of lifestyle. Still like a cool thing to do, like to be a guy who's like a player. Have a bunch of different girls. So, there's a bunch of movies about it during that time, like growing up, seeing like, a young kid growing up, seeing that stuff. You just look at that and be like, yo, this is what I want to be. I want to be like these types of people. Like, I want to be these types of dudes. Like, you there, and these dudes always have like a cool rhyme to something. Like they always talking in some talking a cadence where you don't understand like half the shit they're saying, but like you're like, damn, like this is some cool stuff. Like this dude is cooler than anybody on the planet. Like, he's out here talking about all the different girls he's got. He don't care about none of them, but they still keep coming back to him. So you're like, how the fuck is this? How's he doing this? It's making you drop the side of your head, scratch the side of your head, wondering what's going on. So you got you got that aspect to it. Like I said, you had basketball, you had the music side. That's the 2000s. Everybody's trying to grind. Everyone's mind says, yo, you got to go out there, you got to get that money. People selling cassette tapes. For all you young people who don't know, man, you got to get out there. You had to actually sell cassette tapes. Okay, actually go out there and sell that work. So you had to make sure your music was right. You couldn't sell nobody no garbage if you wanted to make it. And that's how a lot of famous people had to come up. They had to sell their cassette tapes. They had to keep them on them, and they had to, be ready to spit that fire, to sing that, sing with their heart out. You only had you never knew when your time could come. So everybody had a optimistic mindset. You couldn't be on some depressed stuff like that. You had to be, thinking about working on your product and yourself. And so that's how the 2000s go. Uh, I say what a lot of what killed that off slowly. It was not just social media. It was a myriad of things. You know, there's a myriad of things. One, you have so basically you have this terrorism era. You know, we spend all this money, all this propaganda going out here talking about the Middle East, the dangers, and everyone's caught up in the hysteria of terrorism. And then, you know, all of us are like, we all have this hatred put into us about the Middle East. You know, we're all scared of Saddam. We're all scared of Bin Laden. We're all scared of all this stuff that we're being told about in the Middle East. And then after years of being there, we find out that Saddam does not have weapons of mass destruction. And then we find out that the economy is doing terrible. You know what I'm saying? The economy is falling apart. All these big businesses are shutting down. These franchise businesses like Sears, Circuit City, and Radio Shack, and all this type of stuff shutting down. And for someone like me, I wasn't around for the previous recessions in the past. So that was my first time hearing about a recession. I was like, what the hell is this? What the hell is a recession? So, you know, this was like my introduction to these types of shitty situations that our economy continues to fall into. And it is absolute dookie. You know, I don't want to hear about it, but we're always in it. We're always in the circulation of the banks, you know, needing bailouts and, you know, talks about having to help, you know, print more money so it can circulate into the economy, and talks of inflation, you know, home prices increasing, skyrocketing, families struggling, families not having the income to meet the economy, and schools failing, and all this type of stuff. So like it's like, damn, like we're heading into an era of disbelief. You know, now you're not seeing all the different hustles and stuff like that. Now it's like hustling is going down. And also what's going on is now the internet that was there before, now it's building up too. So now you could be online, you could have an online presence, and you could be, you know, whatever online. So now videos are going to be online and YouTube. We're going from the 2000s into the 2010s. You know, now, you know, of course, MySpace is there, YouTube is on, we have all different types of websites going on, and so now people can go on YouTube and they can watch all types of videos of regular people. Now before, the only thing you had to watch like regular people is you had to submit a video. You had to watch submitted videos to America's Funniest Videos. And that was the way you get famous as a regular person. To watch videos through that. So you had that. So now you have now you have YouTube. So you have YouTube, you have these different sites, and you can watch videos and upload music or download music and stuff like that, and you don't have to really put in that same amount of work. So you can just tell, like from around 2004 to 2005 onwards, the quality of the music is not the same. You get a lot of troll music. You know, people making terrible music on purpose, or offbeat music, stuff like that they wouldn't have done before, because people were not playing about their music before that. You knew, like I said, like You knew you had to produce a real product because you never knew when you would get put on. And now it's a joke. It becomes kind of a joke. And also, you have all these kids coming on that don't really, appreciate, you know, well-made music. They'd rather hear some troll shit. So they're making, troll music viral. And in the 2000 late, mid late 2000s onwards, now you get a bunch of troll songs that become popular. I can list them all day. I feel even like Soldier Boy, songs like him, they became popular because of YouTube. And if they made their stuff earlier, it would have fit in like with some of the other southern like dance songs and stuff like that. But Soldier Boy wouldn't have been as relevant as long as he had, because he would have been like in that type of genre. He would have made like a little hit, done a little dance, and then he would have went away. But he was able to stick around because he did it in the YouTube era, where people just wanted to listen to, dance hits and stuff like that. So now it's changing from like people want to actually hear a message. Like people wanted party music before, of course, but like a lot of rap back then, like before, was like predicated on lyricism, and you had to come with like, a real force. You had to come with like, something else. Like you had to let people know, like you were here, you arrived, and you're the best rapper. That's what rap was about. It's a braggadocious art form. It's not just meant to be dance music or just party music. It's meant to be, braggadocious art form to let people know that, your wordplay ability is unmatched. But now, because of this, now you have dance music, and so now lyricism is kind of being taken out of rap, and now it's more about the beat than the lyrics. So you got that going on. And then also this goes on with the mindset of a new generation. So now millennials are here now. So Generation X, they're more into like, gangster rap, and they were more the generation of early hip hop. They were into that. They had their scene where they had their scenes. They had their moments where they were doing their thing. They were, part of the, the war on drugs generation, stuff like that. Now millennials, of course, we already know about all these drugs and things like that. So it's not the same to us. We want to smoke weed. We want to, we want to, just have our fun with the internet and stuff like that. That's our mindset. That's millennials, especially like, like late 80s to like 90s millennials. So we don't have the same mindset as Gen X and, everyone before. We don't get caught up in I feel like with us, we don't get caught up in hysteria as much. Like you can kind of scare them like with drugs, and then past generation be scared by drugs. With millennials, you can't really scare us with drugs. We're not like, oh my gosh, don't give the weed, don't legalize the weed. It's gonna be over. We don't really care. And then we don't really care about, sticking to the rules of things. Millennials don't really care about like marriage like that. Don't really care about being strict with kids. Don't really care about discipline. Don't really care about, all these types of things. Millennials are like loose, So, and then, not also that, like I said, like not really caught up in, racial talking points. So I'm pretty sure those people, like people in power, just like grifters who want to make a buck, gotta look at millennials and go, damn, how are we gonna fucking manipulate this generation that doesn't get caught up in hysteria about drugs or get caught up in hysteria about rap music when they grew up listening to rap music, so it's not a big deal to hear a rapper saying some crazy stuff. They're not caught up in the hysteria of, they're not caught up in the hysteria of, you know, maybe a black guy walking down the street. They're not caught up in the hysteria of living in a neighborhood, people speak a different language. They're not caught up in the hysteria of whatever else. That is just so now, to me, now this is where this is the generation going in. Where now people are on the internet. The internet presence is here. People are communicating through the internet. I think videos are going viral off the internet. More people are, going to get brought into that. So now you have a way of communicating things that, like, people who couldn't talk on the internet before can now come on the internet and get their opinions off, especially in early YouTube and things like that. So now you have all different types of communities in YouTube. People going on the internet talking like, yo, like especially like the early red pill movement, MGTOW. You have early waves of music and things like that, like all this like Chirac stuff and all that, like all this stuff like started on YouTube, and people, like, you never would have thought they would have went viral the way they got viral. Like the word, I remember like when the word when all these Chirac dudes was talking about thoughts and stuff like that, like all that stuff started off YouTube, other World Star and things like that. Like this stuff were just videos put on the internet and started to pick up back in those times, and it went viral. And you just had like, you just put clips on the early internet, and you could do some, if you talked about something unique to you, you could easily get some good numbers. It wasn't saturated. You didn't have a bunch of annoying content creators and stuff like that looking to, entice some conversation. You didn't have any podcasters. You didn't have any of that stuff. So you just sit in your home, make some video about whatever, and you could talk to a community of people about what was going on. I guess that's how I thought it would always be as a youngin. But anyway, so basically, now that you have this going on, when you have that going on, that can create a whole powder keg if you have people now seeing racial inequality taking place, or some type of police shooting taking place. So, now you have Trayvon Martin goes down. Trayvon Martin, gets killed, shot by Zimmerman. All that goes down. This goes on. But I remember hearing about it on World Star. Like somebody made a rap song about it back in like 2011 or something like that. So I hear, I'm like, damn, this 17-year-old kid got killed. Black kid got killed. This guy. And then, then boom, now, you hear about the news talking about it, and it just takes off. I mean, everybody's on top of the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman situation. Everybody's, talking about how bad this is online, and it's just, and then boom, everybody, is waiting to see the detail. And this is how it goes through the 2000s and to the 2010s. But there's the hook. This was also where Obama comes in, because he was talking a lot of LGBT stuff. And people weren't really talking about that like that. Like before that, you weren't like, nobody was like caring about, you knew that was the type of stuff that was getting put in the news here and there. But like regular people were not caring about gay marriage. We weren't caring about, all that type of stuff. Like, even though they're pushing it, like, trying to get people to co-sign gay marriage and all this type of stuff. So I feel like what they did, and they used Obama, they put that stuff into the BLM movement, you know, which is why you see like stuff like during the BLM movement, which I was there for in 2020, they would start talking about how, you know, black trans men, women matter, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? What does that have to do with George Floyd? Like, I don't think I could name any black trans woman that died that went viral for anything, and not because anyone's trying to hide it or didn't give a shit. Like, no one, like, what are you talking about? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? What is this weird ass shit? You know, there's just a bunch of white liberals that started coming into these black lives. Actually, I can't even say they came into it. Like, they're the ones who just like took over it almost from the start, and they were the ones marching through most of these cities, acting a fool. And so, you know, I feel like they co-opted this stuff. I feel like these people came in, a lot of these gentrifiers, they live that lifestyle. They have a lot of money. They want to buy up certain areas. They want to live, you know, in these areas that probably were too, you know, urban, inner city for them. And they realized this was a perfect time, the BLM movement. And so with all this racial hysteria, they able to sneak into these communities, and they able to put up their little rainbow flags with the BLM fist on it, and then all these septum ring black people types with colored hair started popping up in inner cities that you didn't see them before 2012. You didn't see none of this weird shit. People coming in with weird fashion in all inner cities throughout America. And then all these talking points start coming up. Black men are the most homophobic, and, you know, black men are, you know, all these bigots. And black men need to be more accepting of different types of people. Black men this and black men that. And all of a sudden we start hearing this shit. And I had to start learning what the fuck a black feminist was. And you gotta start learning, like, yo, like, what the fuck is a non-binary person? Like, what the fuck is like, what is homophobia? What is transphobia? What is all this? All this stuff starts getting introduced into the mainstream lexicon. Like, we wasn't talking about none of this stuff. What the fuck is all this stuff? What the fuck is all of this nonsense? We wasn't talking about none of this stuff. We just wanted to protest and be like, yo, like, stop fucking trying to kill our people. And then these motherfuckers snuck their rainbow flags into the motherfucking situation. And all of a sudden, we talking about some rainbow shit. And then all of a sudden, Obama comes in out of nowhere. People wasn't even being. I remember he did it. But I remember I was looking at City Hall. I'm like, why the fuck is this shit lit up rainbow? And this motherfucker legalized gay marriage out of nowhere while we were talking about some other shit. And that's how they do things. They sneak shit out. Here. First of all, they do create some kind of hysteria about something, and then boom, in the background, they'll pass some type of policy that people wasn't really paying attention to because they're too busy talking about whatever. So they pass gay marriage and they legalize it. And at the same time, also, Bruce Jenner is talking about, I'm not really a man now, or I'm not a man anymore. I'm a woman now. So now we go into this shit. And that's so he go viral now for saying I'm a she. So I was like, what the fuck is going on? So now that's a whole conversation now. Like, what is a woman really? What is a man? So now we're doing all this. Like, now people are like, now it doesn't matter if you're born a man. That doesn't make you a man. Now it doesn't matter if you're a woman or born a woman. You know, people can change. So now I was like, what the fuck are we doing? How the fuck did we get here? And now people are like, it's not just enough. Now people are like talking about they're cisgendered and whatever the fuck, you know, mixed up with all types of genders and shit like that. And I'm like, this is supposed to be, all this is coming out the BLM type energy. These people done Trojan horse their way into this movement. and their way into inner cities. Because now, if you look at every inner city, like I said, you got all these pink-haired, funny dressing, fashion weirdos. That's everywhere. That would not have been there before 2012. You would not have caught these people in Harlem and certain parts of Brooklyn. You wouldn't have caught these people in Philly, certain parts of Philly. You wouldn't have caught them in certain parts of Boston. Those people would have been ran the fuck out, and they would have been scared to walk down the street. They would have known, like, no, don't come here, looking weird like that. But see, now you got racial hysteria, and everyone's all on edge and arguing about this, and they're not paying attention, really. And you slip in funny style language, and all of a sudden, boom, now all of a sudden, your ass is out here with a Black Lives Matter mask, which, you're out here with pink hair, dressing all weird and shit, walking around inner city areas that was mostly, black people and shit like that walking around. Like, and there's another thing, because everyone's like, oh, just black people. Like, look, you had different types of Hispanics, you had Middle Eastern people, you had a certain type of white person that was around. Because I don't see it's just racially, because that's how this country is, but you had to be a certain type of black person to be in the inner city before 2012, before this BLM hysteria. You had to be built a certain way. You couldn't just come around dressing weird, looking weird, and just being whatever the fuck. You couldn't be antisocial like that. You couldn't be an awkward type person and exist in these areas. You had to be on your toes. You had to look the part. Like, everybody that was in these areas looked like they was about that life. Danger was always around the corner, so everybody knew, you know what I'm saying? Let's all respect everybody. Let's chill out. That's not what we have now. Now you got people talking out their neck. People getting comfortable now. All the people that came to come into these areas now they feeling real comfortable. They feel that they changed the culture enough to where they can be all gender weirdy. And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, damn, how the fuck this happened? And now I'm breaking it down from different eras. This is how we got here. This is what they co-opted black hysteria, and then they brought their rainbow shit into it, and then they took it over, and now they rainbow gentrified inner city areas. And then also they brought in a lot of straight up immigrants during this era too, from Guatemala and stuff like that. Really to be the fall guy, because they're bringing them in knowing this is the Trump era, where Trump is I'm gonna get these people out of here, and he's calling them rapists and stuff like that, and you're just gonna bring them all in here. And his fan base is growing. His fan base is tired of hearing about this person got shot, and this black person got shot, and this black person over here got shot. Now this type of so now this is black people talking about how we're waking up, we're woke now. We're having conversations about no longer wanting to deal with racism. Now we're trying to expose all these different people in power that's talking about, or people in power that's not doing anything. We're trying to figure out, what to do to change the system. Trying to see if we can change the system. So now Trump's building an audience. And he's trying to go out here and get this type of. He's trying to talk against this type of stuff. And he's building an audience because now people, got a lot of white people that's feeling look, why do I have to keep feeling guilty about this person getting shot? This guy, white people bringing up blue lives matter. It's not just black people. White people own that type of shit. They own that type of shit where they're oh, I don't think it's just cool to just be on some black people are victims. What about white people? What about this person? What about that person? And so everyone's going back and forth and bickering about this dumb shit. What about blue lives matter? What about green lives matter? What about pink lives matter? What about blah, blah, blah? What about dog life matters? What about this life matters? So it's now we in this shit. So people arguing about, no, this life matters more. No, this life matters. No, all lives matter, but black lives matter. So we doing that shit. So this is the context that helped Trump come in, because he's the only one really talking this way, and white people resonate with that, or a lot of white people resonate with that. The core of this country resonates with that, because hysteria always seems to come back in America. That is the lay of the land. But so we continue on. So now it's looking crazy, because now Trump is talking crazy, and people are out here, going crazy on Trump and how much they hate Trump. Everybody was pissed off about Trump. You didn't have no people talking about Candace Owens, and then they good, like, people aren't out here slurping Candace Owens. People wasn't out here. There was no Nick Fuentes, and none of these people out here. Right wing had nobody like that, except the old types that's on Fox News. So now you have people going crazy on Trump. Everybody's pissed the fuck off. And, he runs against Hillary, and he wins the electoral vote. So people pissed off. They pissed. Everybody pissed off. What the fuck Trump doing in there? And then, he gets in there, and, the first presidency it's a rocky boat. Some shenanigans going on, some lightweight fraud going on. But compared to this one, his second term is crazy. His second term is definitely a lot worse. But anyways, Trump resonates with these guys, these younger, especially younger white guys. They're like, man, Trump's my guy, because he says what needs to be said. He's not pandering. He's not out here screaming a bunch of this life matters and that life matters. He's like, fuck all of you and your liberal woke talking points. Now, being woke is a thing you can use as a liberal talking point. Now you have conservatives, coming up with narratives to go against the BLM narratives. So now they're counter punching back. So now they're building their side. And now of course Trump has his MAGA people. So that's where the conservatives is at. That's where they are at this time. They have their MAGA folks, and they're there with their talking points, and they want their country to be their way. And if you don't like it in their eyes, well, you get the fuck out. You're someone in their way. They are not playing. And now you have Elon Musk in power, and Trump's. This second presidency is way more different, because now you have all these types of people that's come in, and also now social media is where, since the pandemic, you can use so much. There's so much narratives you can create from social media. There's so many narratives you can create from social media that can take off and then pretty much affect your life, because now everybody's online. So it's damn near like narratives start online instead of real life. We can only see each other through the narratives created from social media. So if you have a big enough following, you can create a whole narrative that can create fake reality that people believe in. And of course that goes with AI. Create AI videos of people falling for them all day on social media. See it on Facebook. People out here commenting on AI videos like they're real. I can't believe you go out and do that. I can't believe she fell through the floor. Like, how did that happen? The floor caved in and she fell. This fat girl fell to the ground. How is this possible? So that's where we're at now in the 2020s. Post PLM hysteria. Now we're in the second Trump era hysteria. And now we have this ethnic need to know what an American is. Who are really the real ethnic Americans? Now everyone's obsessed with wanting to get immigrants out or regulate the amount of immigrants that come here or just get rid of certain groups of people. Now we're on that type of time. Now everybody wants to get a hold of this country and get the numbers down of the immigrants, people who aren't seen as, the real Americans. Who are the real Americans? Who are the people that built America? Everybody wants to know who were the builders of America. Who laid the stones? Who's the backbone of America? Everybody's trying to hold hang their hat on being the main group that America is built on. Like, do you want to be the people that built America? Just like I said, America is built off of hysteria, fooling people into doing something through fear. This is the America that they tell you that it is, and then there's the real America that I just told you. And if you actually look at history, you see it. Or it's like the history that you get, the narrative that you get, and then there's the hysteria. There's always some type of, it's the Red Scare, there's the, there's the, what's this other one? This scares from the 1800s that they used to get control of people. There's all types of racial narratives that were created. Hell, COVID had propaganda in it that they had to look back later and say, hey, that's not what happened. This is what happened. It's like I said before, there's narratives about the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, that had gotten debunked later, but the narrative is already there. Once you put that out there, it's there, and people are going to regurgitate the talking points. And it is what it is. You already put that energy out there, and this is the era now. We're back in hysteria where if you create a narrative about an ethnic group, especially an ethnic group that people already aren't fond of, now you could just spin up hey, I came across a Somali guy. He said we're going to take over America. Now everyone's flipping out. So now white people are basically in their version of the BLM era, where they're flipping out about different ethnic groups that are in America and how they don't feel like they're not American enough to mix into the melting pot of America. These people are just going to create problems. And as now we speak, Trump is going in on Somalis, and he's talking about how their country is a hellhole, and now they escaped to get here, and how they don't seem to be grateful for being here. It's like, how did we get here? And this goes to lead to show that we have to be careful about the type of people that we make popular. On the internet, we tend to just allow anything to go viral, and we get reckless with just allowing people to get viral. And you see that with Charleston White. You see that with who else do you see that? You see that with all types of Tariq Nasheed. You see that with you see that with stooges that follow him. You see that with all. There are people who should not be famous. That this internet is irresponsibly allowed to become famous. There are people that should not be famous or have a good following that have a following, and I believe that needs to be regulated. It should not be. These types of people should not be allowed to just go out here and spread misinformation, just get viral numbers, and just go out here and just be the worst type of person and continuously swindle and con people into thinking that, they're going to help them and figure something out. But, that's my take on how we ended up in the BLM era with BLM hysteria, and that's how we ended up in this current situation now, where everyone's panicking. Everybody wants to know what a real American is, and if you are a Muslim, if you are some type of Somali or Arab or whatever. Unless you're a recent immigrant, if you're coming from below the border, English ain't your first language, you have some type of custom that's not really seen as a Western custom, like holidays or way of dressing or whatever. You might have your Muslim way of praying multiple times a day that cause you to stop what you're doing. There's gonna be a problem being in America these next 3 years. Yeah, these people are not playing now. We're in the opposite era from the last decade. So it's interesting to see now that we have this co-opted psyop movement known as BLM in the inner cities that's out here now being the face of quote unquote woke black people. All these set to bring people running around identifying with this. And then how you have backbone of these new MAGA conservatives and how they talk their talking points. And see, it's interesting to see how they want to see the country run. And yeah, it's interesting to see how this clash is taking place. This is something I never would have thought of in a million years. Even just like in 2016, we all thought it was like, what the hell is going on? Like, you got Donald Trump out here running on the bigoted side. The guy we thought was like, money dude, he had all money. That's who he was. You got Trump running against Hillary Clinton. That's 2016. So we were like, what the hell? And hey, now we're here. So, let me know what y'all think. This is my whole spiel. So hopefully you can keep up with me, and hopefully we can take something from it, add something to it in the comments. Let me know what's up. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Stay blessed.